I like the way that they've done the business early on. That's the way that Celtic and Rangers, that's the way that they should be working. Hearts working smarter, Hearts working quicker.
For me, I just feel as if if there is someone in the Scottish game that deserves a crack at a bigger club, it is Stephen Robinson.
I think a must is a new goalkeeper. And I think Kasper Schmeichel has had an unbelievable career, an incredible career. And he has been an outstanding goalkeeper. But this season, he just hasn't been the same.
Chris, what a week in Scottish football once again. What do you make of it all?
Well, not just what a week, Chris. What a season, really. And
what a year.
I mean,
we'll just start a new one.
Scottish football is the gift that keeps on giving, isn't it? I mean, just amazing. What's happened, the Wilfred Nancy departure, and then my old boss back in, which now the talk is now Martin O'Neill's back in. Do Celtic stand a better chance of winning the title? And even you would admit that Celtic stand a far better chance with Martin back in the door. But it's still fascinating. And whether it's a 3-horse race or a 4-horse race, because of course Motherwell have got Masmanisi back as well now, haven't they, from the AFCON? Who knows? In many ways, you wouldn't sort of put it past anything happening from now to the end of the season. Everything is possible.
You mentioned 4 teams there. Is that Hibs totally ruled out now as well? Are they done? Big game at the weekend.
Well, yeah, I'm going to rule Hibs out of it. Ooh. I'm going to rule Hibs out of it, or I'm going to rule Falkirk out of it as well.
Yeah, Falkirk out of it as well. Falkirk.
Yeah.
What about your old gaffer? He's back. The Wilfred Nancy experiment over. Your old boss back. Is there a different feeling about it this time to what it was a few weeks ago when he came back?
I think I don't know whether there's a different feeling, because the first time round I think there was a lot of excitement. Maybe there's a bit more nervousness around it this time. Not the appointment of Martin, but what now. I mean, there's he's in for the long haul. Can he catch Rangers? Who knows? This moment in time, and I've said it all season. With Celtic squad, if Celtic do not add, it doesn't matter whether Martin O'Neill's in charge, Wilfred Nancy's in charge, Brendan Rodgers, if he was in charge. If Celtic do not strengthen their squad significantly in January, then I don't think Celtic win the league. And I think that Martin coming back, that must have been part of the chat he had with the Celtic board to say, well, you've got to tool me up. And it's interesting in his, in his press conference that, he came out and he was quite open about it. And, he wants bodies in the door. I think Martin is a, super smart guy, super smart coach. And he's very well aware that he needs help.
It sounds as if Sean Maloney's going to be more hands-on this time, not only on the pitch, but recruitment as well. How do you think that'll go down?
In truth, Chris, I honestly haven't got a clue. What do we know? Well, we talk about Wilfred Nancy going, but Paul Tisdale going. I think everybody at Celtic, all the fan base wanted him out, and he's the guy who's sort of being held accountable, for the poor transfer activity which has gone on, and of course for recruiting Wilfred Nancy. But now he's gone. All the planning, if there was planning with regards to bringing players in, that's gone as well. So Sean Maloney now is starting sort of with a clean slate. But Celtic need to work fast. They need to work quickly in this transfer window. I think it's the same for all clubs. Chris, I think it's interesting that Hearts have done a couple of pieces of business early on. They're getting their work done, and Celtic are playing catch up. So I think, in Martin's presses, he's talking about sort of the onus is on Sean to bring the players in, but that doesn't half put a lot of pressure on Sean Maloney and his judgment. And we all know that January is notoriously a difficult month for to bring players into football clubs. It's not the same as the summer, but Celtic have to just think short term, and I think Celtic are going to have to take a punt on one or two and gamble, and who knows what might happen in that respect. But I still stand by what I say. Whoever gets the better of this January transfer window, I think wins the league. And Rangers are interesting in that respect as well, because Danny Rohl has sort of produced miracles to get them back in the title race. I mean, he really has. And yet there was a feeling, we were at the Aberdeen game last night. There's a feeling that Rangers, they've still got a long way to go. They're not sort of hitting the heights. They're not playing particularly well, but he's getting the job done. So, there's a lot of potential at Rangers still to kick on. And I think Rangers fans will be thinking, well, eventually we will start performing, but maybe they're the same as Celtic, that they need bodies in the door to freshen things up, especially in that attacking third of the pitch.
No, I agree with you. I mean, I think, and I've been pretty consistent on the whole thing with Rangers as well. I think they've been winning games of football, but it's not been convincing. A lot of the times as well, even last night, Chris, I mean, we both spoke about how poor Aberdeen were, especially that first half, but they still had arguably the two best chances of the half. Poor first touch. I thought it was you that was going through and goal. But I think when you look at when you look at Rangers right now, they're winning games of football. It might not be convincing, but they're winning games. I always feel as if when that's happening, your luck eventually runs out and you run into trouble. And that's where I think if Danny Rohl can go and get 2 or 3 players in that can help the squad, I still think, I mean, I know Chermiti get 2 goals at the weekend against Celtic, but I still think Miovski's been a disappointment. He's struggled so far. Danilo, the exact same. Chermiti has obviously been the one that's been, the number 9 jersey right now, but I still think Rangers need somebody at the top end of the pitch. I still think they need strengthened in other areas as well if they're going to mount a serious challenge. But they're winning games.
Other areas?
I think still defensively. I mean, Fernandes has been scoring goals, but Djigi's to come back, but I'm not convinced with him either. I feel as if Danny Rohl would be looking for a centre-back. Left-back still an area. The 3 midfielders have done well recently, barring Diamondi and Raskin, but it looked as if Diamondi went off with a slight injury last night, so, I mean, will he be available for the weekend? Mikey Moore as well. We both were a bit surprised with that decision for him to leave the field at half-time last night, suggests to me that there might have been, a niggle there as well. So there is no doubt Rangers need to strengthen. Where do you think Celtic, if they're talking about bringing in 1 or 2 players, what's a must for Celtic?
I think a must is a new goalkeeper, and I think Kasper Schmeichel has had an unbelievable career, an incredible career, and he has been an outstanding goalkeeper. But this season, he just hasn't been the same. He looks big, he looks sort of slightly heavy. And I think I think he's a problem for Celtic. I think that centre forward position, Johnny Kenny, said many times, said on the warm up before that Celtic can do better than Johnny Kenny. And I don't want to sit here and sort of pan, Johnny Kenny, but he's not a young kid anymore. He's had opportunities. He's not a Celtic centre forward. Iheanacho, you can't trust his. Him and his fitness, and then Dazen Maeda. I know Martin finished off at the end of his time, the mini time last time round. Dazen Maeda as a centre forward, but I always think he's better off that left hand side. I just wonder whether Celtic should go for a Callum Wilson.
Kyogo?
Yeah.
Could we see a return?
I'd take Kyogo back. I know things haven't gone well for him at Birmingham.
You've never
City,
really got over that one.
I haven't, but I don't think I'm alone in that. I think there are sort of thousands and thousands of Celtic fans who are the same, and maybe it's worth a punt. The issue clubs have in January is they may just have to think loans. That's the difficulty. But Celtic need better in than what they've got, and. I think you said at the weekend against Rangers, and I totally agree. If Celtic had a centre forward, they'd have been out of sight at the weekend. And it's week
But I
after
think
week
that's,
where it's.
Chris, I think that's
It's,
not
it's,
only
it's
on
been all
that game.
season.
You go
No, it's
back,
been all
the
season.
last few
Yeah.
games. I mean, it's Dundee United. It should have been over.
Yeah.
Aberdeen, they end up hanging on towards the end. Sorry, they're not hanging on, but they find a winner late on. But they should have been out of sight. It's a common theme that's happening with Celtic, even under Wilfred Nancy. And I know they got punished for it, but if they had a striker, you would have felt as if those games had been finished.
Yeah, and even the sale of Adam Eder just looks more ridiculous by the day, doesn't it? That he wasn't going to go, and unless they got a replacement, just that physicality. And Celtic have struggled all season. You're quite right. So that's an area of concern. Everything I read is Celtic are sort of linked with wingers all the time.
Yeah,
I'm not
yeah.
so sure that they actually. That is that's an area of priority. But if you can get better in than what you've got, then of course you will. But Martin, of course, will go back to a flat back four. Scales will come back in, and maybe in contention for my Player of the Year again when he comes back into the the Celtic.
I mean, I know you've spoken there, and listen, I think you're quite right to mention like Celtic have to think short term. In terms of some signings, but a Mannice at Motherwell's done really well. Kieran Bowie's done really well. You would think that would be something for the next couple of years. Would that be something that might interest Celtic?
I think you get better in than what you've got, and I think if you said Mannice as a central striker at Celtic, he's better than anything Celtic have got, and I think with Kieran Bowie, the same. So I think it's short term. Celtic have got to forget about sort of planning for next season. I know in the background they have to think about that as well, but have to forget about that. The aim is just winning the title. However they do it, it's rushed. It's going to be there's going to be errors along the way. But Celtic have 75, 80 million in the bank, and they have to gamble now. I mean, it's serious. It's getting away from them. Martin knows that. Martin is well aware of that. And bringing him back, it would be really deeply unfair on him if they didn't back him. So, everything in my stomach tells me they must, they're not going to let him down in this respect. It would be a real sort of dereliction of duty if the Celtic hierarchy didn't back Martin O'Neill right now.
I know. Listen, you've had plenty of say in the Celtic hierarchy, and rightly so, because they have. There's a few questions out there that needs answered from them. But Celtic fans must be delighted to see the back of Paul Tisdale as well. Head of football operations, but I mean, let's be realistic. Inside his time at the football club, it's not been good enough.
No, it hasn't, and there's a lot of responsibility on that particular role. Recruitment always, being a massive part of football. Of course, coaching's important, management and leadership is important, but football essentially is all about players and the quality of players, and don't have to go back over old ground. My feelings. I think your feelings are. Would be the same as mine. If you let quality go, you have to replace that quality with at least the same quality, if not more. That's the aim, and Celtic haven't done that. That's why they are where they are. That's why they've been through. Well, they're on the fourth manager this season. I know Martin O'Neill twice. That's why it's been a real mess. But I suppose for all the despair, for all the anger at the club, Celtic still have a chance of winning the title. And, many Celtic fans think now Martin O'Neill's back, they have the greatest chance of winning the title. I do think that complacency isn't there anymore with Celtic fans, where there is that expectation. I think they know that they're going to have to work exceptionally hard to do that.
Well, enough in Glasgow. Let's move through to Edinburgh. Hearts, they just keep on going. Another terrific result for them. I don't think it was the best performance at the weekend against Livingston, but similar, and you've touched on it. You just need to keep winning games, and that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, who cares? If you're Derek McInnes, you are sitting there, you're just thinking, let's grind. Let's get the grind on with it. And they've been brilliant all season. I like the way that they've done the business early on. That's the way that Celtic and Rangers, that's the way that they should be working. Hearts working smarter, Hearts working quicker, gives them
leading the way in Scottish football
far
now.
greater chance. I think so at this moment in time, in terms of the thought process, in terms of planning. You know, it's okay having a plan, but you don't need to keep talking about a plan. You know, you have to get on and do it, and that's where they've been good. That's the dream for football clubs in January, and for managers especially. I know, every January is the same. Managers will talk about players being out of reach and what have you, but it's not helping them on the pitch. Rangers need help on the pitch. Celtic need help on the pitch. Hearts need help on the pitch, and they're getting the work done. That gives them a greater chance. It just does. And everybody else in Scottish football this season is playing catch up to Hearts. That doesn't necessarily mean, I'm not sitting on the fence here, the Hearts are going to go on and win it. I still think that the overwhelming majority of people think, well, Celtic will find a way, or Rangers may find a way, albeit the Rangers mentality, when they've been in the box seat in recent seasons, they find a way of cocking things
now
up.
They're on a roll,
they?
friend. It's different now.
They're on a roll, and
Danny
they
boy.
are, and I absolutely accept that. But they're on a roll with Danny, but it's the same group of players essentially who have choked time and time again, and that will be the test. But maybe there is a different mentality. In fact, there is a different mentality, but the pressure's not really on yet, is it, for Rangers? But they are finding a way. They're ugly. It's not nice to watch at times. If you're a Rangers fan, I mean, we were there last night. I mean, most of the stadium had emptied before the end of the game. The Rangers fans were sort of
They'll just copy the Celtic fans from the weekend, mate.
That's good for you. It was colder at the weekend, wasn't it? That's why the Celtic fans.
I'm not so sure. I had to listen to you talking all night. By the way, it's interesting you mentioned there from a Hearts point of view. You look at, we've spoken about it. The weak area in the Hearts team. I'm not so much of a weak area, but the right back. They've went and strengthened in that area. They're going to strengthen the middle of the pitch. There's talk of a striker coming in as well. They brought the boy from Kazakhstan. That's eventually got over the line. I'll let you pronounce their names because I know that's what you're all about. But they've strengthened. They go to Dundee. It's a live game on Sky at the weekend. They go there on Sunday. Could you potentially see that as a banana skin? Or do you think them just to go and get the job done?
No, I can. Because I think Dundee have improved along the season's gone on under Stephen Presley, but they are tailor-made. Tailor-made's a bit strong, but he sets them up. They're a good counter-attacking team. They're a team, I think, they've evolved a little bit throughout the season, but I think that Stephen Presley likes teams to come onto his team. So I think it's an awkward fixture. They had a good win against Dundee United in the derby. They will be on an absolute high. They really will be. So I think Hearts will still have their moments where they will lose games, they will drop points. I'm absolutely certain of that. But I'm also certain of Rangers and Celtic in their current guys with their squads, that I think we both feel that they'll drop points as well. And that's why I'd rather be Hearts than anybody else at this moment in time. Now, if Celtic go into the transfer market and little Sean Maloney gets his bazooka out and brings in some big hitters, then there could be trouble for everybody. But it's the same with Danny Rohl. Danny Rohl could, bring a couple of players from the Bundesliga who come over and tear it up in Scotland. It's the arms race which is going to decide the title this season. I'm absolutely certain of that. But Hearts are ahead at this moment in time because they are getting bodies in the door. They are being proactive. And we know why Celtic are playing catch up, which makes it so difficult for poor old Sean Maloney. I thought, Martin played a blinder, sort of saying, "Well, I'll leave all that to Sean."
Is Martin poor old Martin? No, is it just Sean now?
There's Magic Martin.
You're still terrified of Martin, aren't you?
Oh yeah, oh absolutely. I think so. I think I said to you last night. So are you, really?
Never.
I don't know anybody who wants to get into a verbal joust with Martin O'Neill. So I'd be careful. I'd be careful what you say about him.
Well, we'll get him in and we'll see what he's got to say. What about? Let's move. You've stuck up for this man often enough as well. Jimmy, no longer. He's out. Jimmy Thelin gone. Aberdeen. Where are they?
Where are they? Judging by the performance at Ibrox last night, they are miles off it. They are a club in a bit of disarray. Um, and look, Jimmy Thelin, I know we differ on this. Jimmy Thelin won Aberdeen a trophy. Jimmy Thelin won Aberdeen the cup, first time in 35 years. In his first season, he had that amazing start, and then they fell away. But he did win the cup. This season, it's been disappointing. Poor start, picked up a little bit, and then recently it was it's been so flat. And so his ego comments after the game against Falkirk and talking about the lack of fight in the team, that was probably the end of him. After comments like that, it's where they go next, but they don't seem in a hurry to bring a new manager in.
No wonder
I
the
think
director of football. He's in the dugout. He can do what he wants.
Yeah, and
That was interesting.
and it was interesting, and this is. I think in the Bundesliga, it's the norm, stuff like that. It's just it doesn't seem quite right, I suppose. If somebody did that in the Premier League, or, you couldn't imagine Jason Wilcox in the dugout of Manchester United, for example. But if it's the norm in the Bundesliga, maybe it'll become the norm in Scotland. But I'm not so sure. I can't imagine, say, Martin O'Neill sort of sitting in a dugout, and if Paul Tisdale was still at the club,
Well,
Paul
that might be the
Tisdale,
case. Sean Maloney's a recruitment guy now as well.
Well,
He's
he is.
director of football.
Sean Maloney's got many roles at the club at this moment in time. I just he was ready first time round, and Mark Fotheringham, but this time round it is difficult because when it's short term, and everybody knew it was going to be short term, and when I mean short term, they knew a new manager was going to be appointed quicker. This feels different, and I think the pressure because of that is going to be different for Celtic, and it's how they handle.
For Martin, it was longer than the last manager, friend.
It was still short term. It was still short term, but I can't tell you how big a game Dundee United is because everybody I've spoke to have said they fear for Dundee United at the weekend. But Jim Goodwin's got his team, well, they do.
Without a striker.
I'm just telling you. I'm just telling
you
what people have said, that they think that the Martin O'Neill impact, the Martin O'Neill effect. Name names. Well, I've got a lot of friends. Patrick.
Who else?
Yeah.
Who else?
Martin.
Declan.
Another one. Declan. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Listen. Who's next for Aberdeen?
Well, you were talking about Stephen Robinson and bigging him up,
Yes,
but
I was.
I think the Aberdeen sporting director talked about brand of football being really important, style of football, playing with a high intensity and a high press, and I'm not so sure that Stephen Robinson teams do that with the greatest respect. One thing I would say about Stephen Robinson, and the style thing, though, he gets the best out of what he's got. So that doesn't mean that he couldn't adapt if he went to Aberdeen. But I don't see it that way. I mean, that you'd go for the Motherwell manager over Stephen Robinson if you wanted to play in a particular style. Yeah. So yeah, what do you think?
Well, I know I touched on it last night regarding Hearts and their approach. Their approach to go and look for a new manager. I've got the best database in the world, or access to the best database in the world. I think that sometimes we are quite quick to dismiss our coaches that are working in our game. But Hearts decided to go for Derek McInnes. The other two it was in the list were John McGlynn and Stephen Robinson as well. I think for Aberdeen, they could do a lot worse than look at someone like Stephen Robinson, because personally, I think 3 back-to-backs, or back-to-back-to-back, and top sixes. He's then added the League Cup. For me, I just feel as if there is someone in the Scottish game that deserves a crack at a bigger club, it is Stephen Robinson. I totally get that, the whole Jim Goodwin experiment with Aberdeen didn't work out. I still maintain that it was a bad 5-6 weeks for Jim Goodwin at Aberdeen. I think it's a total different. It's a more experienced manager that we get in Stephen Robinson. But I think for Aberdeen, they've went away from what they were for me. I've touched on it in numerous things in the last week or so that Aberdeen, when you go back through the last few years, they've been able to bring in players, whether it's been players that have signed full time or even guys on loan. When you think of Ryan Christie, that have came in and then went back to Celtic. Liam Scales went to Aberdeen, done really well, gave him a platform to then further his career. But people like Kenny McLean as well. There's numerous ones at Aberdeen that came in, done really well, and moved on to Lewis Ferguson. I feel as if Aberdeen they've went for this overseas market. They brought them in.
Too many Scandinavians.
Too many Scandinavians, friend, you're right. But I can't, for me, I don't see many players in that Aberdeen team that are actually worth a lot of money. If they're going to sell them. And that would be a worry, because they've bought a lot of these players. Their value has dropped, maybe because they're not winning any games, but their value's dropped. Where are they going to recoup this money from? Because Aberdeen's wage bill is as high as it's ever been, and they're underperforming. So they need to get a manager, for me, that finds a way to get the best out of an underperforming group right now.
You mentioned Stephen Robinson, but from if you're an Aberdeen fan and you see the club appoint somebody from a team who's lower in the table, and Aberdeen fans are disappointed with their season, really disappointed. I mean, is that what would you think about that? Would that not be a little bit of a disappointment?
I think you've got to look at, there's no doubt,
The
if
bigger
you compare
picture.
budgets with St Mirren and Aberdeen, and I know it's totally different, but if you compare what Stephen Robinson has done in the period that Jimmy Thelin was here and he was here, Stephen Robinson, has done every as well as Jimmy Thelin. They've both got their hands in a cup. They've both been in the top six. But Jimmy Thelin had an absolute humongous wage bill to go and do that. And Aberdeen honestly, they've been honking for a period of time now. Really, really poor. And I know, listen, the Scottish Cup, and rightly so, Jimmy Thelin will come back in years to come and celebrate it, and so he should, because it was a fantastic achievement for the amount of time that it taken Aberdeen to go and win another cup. But the reality is, league form has been abysmal, and that's why he's lost his job. For me, go and get Stephen Robinson. He knows the league. I think he'll get more out of this underperforming group. He's shown that he can make players better. He can structure a team, and I just feel as if that would be a good fit for Aberdeen. What about
Here's one
the
for you,
other?
though.
When you go,
Yeah, I was just going to say, it's interesting, that they can take the time, the sporting directors, that they can take the time over the appointment, because I think they're 12 points clear of Kilmarnock in 11th. So Aberdeen are going to be fine this season. They're going to stay in the league, so they are biding the time. But of course, Kilmarnock have got a new little guy in charge, haven't they? How do you think will the little fella keep them up? What do you think? What's your gut feeling on a club you know that well?
I think he's got his work cut out. But worst case for me, I think Kilmarnock will finish 11th. I think it's a should appointment for Kilmarnock, if I'm being honest, because I don't think they've got a lot of time to bring someone in to allow them to have another 5-6 weeks to get to know the league, to get to know the players, Neil McCann, as we know, is a very, very busy man. He works on a lot of platforms. He's seen a lot of Kilmarnock. He's seen a lot of the league. He knows exactly what he's going into. And I think, it's a great game for him at the weekend. Livingston below, it'll be a great game if they win, but if they lose, all of a sudden the pressure comes on. But he knows the team. He knows what it needs. He knows that it's going to, there's potentially going to have to get another 3 or 4 players in. But it's the same as every club. Kilmarnock will need to get players out before they can, I think they'll have enough to bring in 1 or 2, but if he's going to bring in 3 or 4 that will totally change the team, he's probably going to have to wheel and deal and get a few out. But it's going to be difficult for Kilmarnock. It's not been a great season, but I do think it's a good appointment. I really do. I think, Neil, he will get a tune out of them. You can tell he's a fiery little character, as we know. You encountered that as well, didn't you? Remember, have you got a Kilmarnock game coming up? Remember, he didn't let you on the touchline at Dundee one day.
Yeah, at Dundee, yeah, he wouldn't let me.
Yeah.
When I used to to work for BT. Yeah, we used to do the little things before the games. Wanted to hit a golf ball, but Angry Neil came out and stopped us at
Didn't
Dens
let you.
Park. Sent us off, sent us away. Angry little fella. They lost the game. I was glad they lost the game that day, and he ended up getting the sack not long after that. So
Not long after it, and then he come back.
Yeah.
When do you think he'll be back working with us?
Give it a couple of weeks. He'll be back on every platform, telling everybody what they should be doing.
No, okay.
No. I wish him well. He's all right, Neil.
Yeah, no, listen, as I said, for me, I think it's a good appointment for Kilmarnock, and I think he will. I think he'll keep the club up. And on that as well, somebody else that was linked with the job, our little sidekick, has disappeared to America again. He's got some life, Stephen Naismith.
Yeah. Part-time Nazy, they call him. Part-time for Scotland and part-time for the warm-up. Yeah, I mean, we all make the effort to rock up on every show, but. Yeah. He does what he wants. Stephen Naismith. He does what he wants.
He does what he wants. That's us. We're out, friend. On that note, I'll see you at the weekend.
See ya. He does do what he wants.